Welcome to the Recap Book Chat. We are a mother and daughter duo
conversing about books over a cup of joe.
Seeking truth to help us glow.
Ready, set, let's grow!
Welcome to the Recap Book Chat. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today, we are diving into a big classic. It is Julius Caesar by
Shake That Spear. William Shake That Spear, as Titus likes to call him. William Shakespeare, written in 1599.
supposedly performed at 1623, I think.
Okay.
Possibly Globe Theater's opening play. I don't know.
Really?
Rumor has it.
Well, and what prompted me to read this was the book, The Wednesday Wars. And because we had agreed to read Measure to Measure, because I had read that in a book somewhere. But then when I got a hold of Wednesday Wars, I'm like, can we change it? Can we change it? Because he was just reading and enjoying all these Shakespeare, And so I'm like, let's check in. Measure to Measure wasn't one of them. So.
You know what's fascinating about Shakespeare? And I'm so glad. I appreciate you that we get to do this. We always get at least one Shakespeare in a year, sometimes multiple ones, but at least one. But he was the son of a glove maker. He had a very limited education. But you say Shakespeare, pretty much the world knows Shakespeare and has known him for thousands of years. That's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool.
And that he coined a lot of phrases that we don't even, we're not even aware of. And some quotes you read in advertisements or you hear in sitcoms or movies, and you don't even attribute it to Shakespeare until you're reading Shakespeare and then you say, what? And it is amazing.
What if he had said, I'm just the son of a glove maker? I have all these ideas, but what I'm not gonna, what if he had those limiting beliefs, those lies?
Well, I did want to tell you that there are some people that think that he didn't do it because he was the son of a glove maker. They said there's no way he could have written these plays. There's a vein of people out there that don't think that he did. And
so what do they think happened?
Well, I haven't ever went down that rabbit hole because, I've read the story. He did live. He did, I trust the story that he was a man and, because you've read enough about him. He had a lot of heartache, like he had a child or two to die and all that kind of stuff. And how right when that happened, the play would come out like Hamlet, where there's a lot of death and everything. That's too coincidental, I think, but I do think they are the naysayers. There's always going to be those. Those are the people that just want to say, haters are going to hate. That's what I say.
I feel like that's a hard sell for a playwright. I feel like if you're a novelist, you could, sometimes they use different names. You might be able, but if you're writing a play that's being performed while you're alive, people are going to know who you are. You're the one trying to get the play going. So I feel like it would be harder to not be who you say you are. If that makes sense.
Well, to me, I guess also, as long as I've taught, I've had really sharp kids, and that doesn't mean that they came from doctors and lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
That they could be in anyone's kids. A lot of it is how much did they work at it, and we know he had a work ethic. He even worked in his father's shop some. So, I'm reading that book, The 8 Smarts of Kids, and to me, she says the more you use all of those, the better. So body smart, and kids don't work as much as they used to. They were expected to work years ago, and that working, they say if you go on a walk or do something off of what you were working on, you'll think, and you'll have a good idea. Who's to say some of this might have come about while he was working in his father's shop?
That's a great point. 100%. So let's dive in to Julius Caesar. So we kick off just the overall summary. Julius Caesar is returning to Rome triumphant. And the senators are afraid that he's going to become this tyrant king. and they form a conspiracy led by, is it Cassius?
Yes.
Okay, Cassius. I don't know if I was saying it right. Cassius and Brutus. And of course, we know that they assassinate him on the Ides of March. And then we have Mark Antony's powerful speech that turns the crowd against the killers, and then we have civil war. So that's kind of like the summary of it.
Just to put this in a timeline of America, so Julius Caesar was assassinated 40 years before Jesus. So that kind of timeline.
That's cool.
Yeah, because there are Caesars in the Bible, so it's not Julius.
And he's a real person.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he can take this event that everybody know. I mean, we all knew Caesar was going to get killed when we started reading this. We knew that. But he writes in such a way it just pulls you in. And you're just like, what's going to happen? It's not, we know what's going to happen, but how is Shakespeare going to tell the story of how it happens? And that's correct. That's correct.
That's really, you're right. That is when everybody knows and we're still on the pins and needles. You're right.
Amazing.
Well done. And the fact that he was a real character, I'm trying to think, was there other real characters he wrote about, or was this?
Well, yes, because he also writes about 10 years later, Antony and Cleopatra, and I haven't read that one, but.
Is that the same Antony from?
Yes. It tells you what happens 10 years later.
Okay. Well, we should probably do that one next.
I had trouble not saying Anthony instead of Antony. There is no H in it. So that was hard for me. Antony and Anthony. I mean, I've always said Anthony and Cleopatra, not Antony. In fact, I've made fun of Sylvester Stallone in that movie Oscar where he said Antony. Well, Antony was closer than my Anthony.
So that's cool. So he was a real person and he lived 40 years before Jesus. Thank you for that. That does help with the time.
Puts us in, and then you already said the setting is in Rome and he's coming back from a victory and, they offer him the crown 3 times and he refuses it, which this is, you may think, well, that's not that important. Well, it is later on that he refuses this crown 3 times because Cassius is saying that he's too ambitious. He's too greedy and all this. Well, then as a reader, you're saying, well, why is he refusing the crown then? Why doesn't he take it? That's
so what
doesn't get answered.
Do you think, I mean, because the information that we're given in the play shows that it seems like he is not this tyrant, that he does care about the people, that he's not power hungry. So does Cassius, does he know he's not power hungry? Is he just power hungry and will say anything to get power? Or like, what is his deal? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, he is in fact, he's the instigator of it all. In fact, he manipulates Brutus because Brutus is close to Caesar and Brutus should have known better. But as some of it was false, he had false documents and all of that. So he manipulates Brutus. And I think his was just power. And
do you think it was envy? The sin of envy?
Yeah. I just put over here that he was jealous. But
that's the same, yeah.
Kind of in that same vein.
And so that led him to lie, cheat, kill, steal, whatever to get.
He did it all. Yeah. And you're like, wow. It is when you realize that, and I also thought it was interesting that in their they throw in that Caesar had epilepsy, which I didn't know, and that he was deaf in one ear or something like that, and partially deaf, and that he could have been infertile. And Caesar just kind of slips that. I mean, Shakespeare slips that in there, and you're like, what? And the way he said the infertility came why somebody that was going to run a race, he wanted them to touch his wife because that's supposed to break the infertility just in past, which we don't know that but it says, forget not in your speed, Antonius, to touch Calpurnia, for our elders say the barren touched by this holy chase shake off their sterile curse. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Just
Yeah,
somebody.
I'm glad you pulled that out.
But to me, that would be embarrassing. So we're telling everybody I'm infertile. I mean,
Practical.
Yeah.
Which shows, though, he's not. I mean, you wouldn't do. I feel like that's pretty transparent for a politician.
Yeah.
So most politicians try to appear perfect.
That is true. I hadn't thought about that.
So since we're already on roll call, go ahead. We're kind of talking about Cassius, this jealous, envious conspirator who recruited Brutus. But so what about Julius? So we know he's a very popular general.
I have a quote from Julius.
Yeah.
I think it's very powerful. In fact, just let it marinate just a second. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once.
Very good.
Powerful. I mean, how does Shakespeare pack so much punch in just a few words? I don't know.
That was the quote that changed my mind on Caesar. Because at first, I kind of was, I guess I'm naive. And what Cassius was saying, I'm like, oh, I guess Julius Caesar is this horrible person and all of this. Until it's Caesar and when his wife, and when he says that, I'm like, I don't think he is as bad as Cassius is saying.
Well, and when you think he turned down the crown 3 times, that's what got me. I said, well, he turned it down 3 times. And he has other problems of his own,
So tell us about Brutus. So that's Caesar. And then we have Brutus.
Yeah, on Brutus, a very gifted speaker. And I think he was smart, but he might have been a bit naive to be manipulated so easily. I mean, I don't think, and his wife was a caution too. His wife was Portia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's a little bit of a caution. She wants to talk to her, and he doesn't. And, to me, I picture him as being idealistic. And that's the, how you see it in your head. And it wasn't how if you're an idealist, you have to be careful that no one's perfect. No one. So is Caesar perfect? No, he's not. But neither is anyone else.
But he's not as bad as Cassius painted him to be.
No.
I mean, was he worth stabbing to death? No. And you're right. I do think idealists have to be careful, because I bet the same thing with like communism. Mm-hmm. It started as an idea that sounded good, but sometimes those ideas don't play out well, and you have to have, I don't know, what balances idealism?
Realism. I mean, what's happened? And then that's why you study history, so history won't repeat itself. I saw someone, it might have been Charlie Kirk, who asked someone to state one country or one time in history where communism worked. Well, they couldn't. They got kind of mad, and because they were just so they were so bent on their statements, the idealistic statement. But he's saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, hear what I'm saying. Name a time in history when it worked. You don't understand. And she just got louder. And I said, no, you're the one that didn't understand. But history is very powerful.
I did have I forgot to say my quote from, I thought it was Cassius. No, is it Casca? I get confused on
there is a Casca.
Okay. Well, I just thought this was funny then. This rudeness is a sauce to his good wit, which gives men stomach to digest his words with a better appetite. The rudeness, because they were talking about someone who's rude, but the rudeness is a sauce to his good wit. It gives men the stomach to digest his words with a better appetite. I thought, how well said.
He's very, very witty, very witty. So tell us about, I guess you could throw in, we talked about Cassius, and then there, as a back one, who is Octavius? Because he's going to come out later. Octavius is the great nephew of Caesar. That's important.
Yes.
And then
that's more towards the end.
Yeah, all of the senators, most of them were with Cassius. And, that's another thing. Cassius needed Brutus, because I don't think they were flocking to Cassius. But Brutus was a linchpin. So when he got Brutus, he got all the rest, you know?
So, but again, so manipulative. And you're right. He was using Brutus. And I mean, think of the destruction that I guess you would call those a contaminant. I think Cassius is a
Whoa.
contaminant.
Yeah, I'm going to write that in my book. Yeah, that's very good. That's better than jealous.
Because there was nothing wrong in the situation, but he caused a lot of problem and death and destruction.
By his twisted thinking, you know.
Mhm.
When you are a politician, you should be thinking widely, like what is best for the people. And obviously what is best for the people if Caesar would have been left in control, you know. Because then bedlam breaks out after this. And I do think that
civil war.
Yeah. Shakespeare is trying to also show us, though, that even though Julius Caesar was a powerful man, that when he was still brave because this guy told him said on the Ides of March, you will die, blah, blah. He keeps showing up. And so if he had been a coward or if he hadn't been a good leader, then he would have stayed in on the 15th of March.
His wife had a dream pretty much verbatim about what was going to happen, begged him not to go. So he kind of knew it was not, he was walking into something bad. So very brave, very brave.
That's nothing new, though, a husband not listening to his wife. That's not groundbreaking even for Shakespeare.
Maybe that's the lesson, okay? Maybe, man, if you just listen to your wife. But, I mean, we can't fault him he was doing his job. He was showing up. He was, so.
Well, I mean, if you think about like John F. Kennedy, there was a lady, which I can't remember her name, but she had predicted that a world leader would be assassinated. So at the start of 63, of course, I know a lot of people, but this girl had a lot happen, but he wouldn't have went anywhere, but he kept going and doing. But what kind of, what's that saying that said the safest place for a ship is in the harbor, but that's not what ships were built for. So as a president, he went out and met the people, and you read that all through history, like some of those Teddy Roosevelt was shot at, and a book saved his life. I think he had a book in his vest. McKinley was killed. I mean, Garfield. I mean, these are very brave men, and they went ahead, and because that directs your nation. If you are cowering in fear, then so your people will do that as well. Just like a parent, if you want to model honesty, then you can't cheat people, or your kids are going to see what you're doing, not what you're saying. So,
That's true.
I did not dislike Caesar after reading them.
No, and I'm just curious if the real Caesar was like the play. I want him to be like the play. I don't know. I want to go with Shakespeare's version, so I haven't dug into that.
No.
I feel like it would be fairly similar because I feel like he would want to represent what really happened. But anyway,
we can look into. I have another quote this is one that everyone has heard, and that's where it comes from. Julius Caesar. It is Greek to me. How many people haven't heard that? That was Shakespeare.
And it was so funny because he was Greek. The Greek man was talking and he didn't understand Greek. So I thought I underlined that too because I thought that's hilarious. That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
And I got this one from, and I had heard this in the Wednesday War. He quotes it a lot, but you blocks, you stones, you worse than senseless things.
I mean, one thing is the rhythm and the flow of his words. That's a craft, I do think.
Absolutely.
And then the classic friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Well, I remember being a little kid and I heard that somewhere. And I always pictured people I thought it would be funny if people had fake ears and they just threw them out there, but lend me your ears. And that goes with what Jesus says. People have to have ears to hear. And he's asking for their attention, which I like that. We're in our society. I think you've pointed that out, that what is social media wanting? Your time. They're wanting your time.
Attention.
but they're not being as polite as Shakespeare saying, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. No, they don't want you to lend them. They want all. They are like, they want you to doom scroll forever. I mean, they don't want you to put it down.
That's true.
And he was asking politely.
So Mark Antony is very loyal. He's a friend of Caesar, very loyal to Caesar, since we're talking about him. And which well played Mark Antony, because you just saw your friend, this very prominent general, be stabbed to death in public by his so-called friends and other senators. And so you're like, oh. So the fact that, well, and we have to mention that Mark Antony was going to be killed if Cassius got his way. Brutus did stand up for Mark Antony and said no. But then Mark Antony, after everything's done, that they've killed Caesar, he does ask to speak at Caesar's funeral. And so you don't think words are powerful? Sometimes people think, words are powerful. You can say a lot.
You are right, Kate. Wow. This is a great illustration for that. He flips the whole crowd. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're always saying words are powerful, but yeah, and he starts out his speech saying, I come not to praise Caesar, but to bury him. So, of course, Brutus thinks that he's on his side. And in fact, if you read it, it's hard to see the switch, but I sent you Daniel Day-Lewis reading it, and man, when he reads it, whoa, what did you think of that?
Powerful. Yeah, thank you for sending that. There is something that actors can bring to that. And I didn't really, because he keeps saying he's an honorable man. Brutus is an honorable man. But when Daniel Day-Lewis is reading it, you're like, oh, that's kind of like sarcastic, because an honorable man wouldn't do that.
Brutus is an honorable man. I mean, in his timing. But when you think about it, Shakespeare wrote this to be read. So naturally, even I found myself reading part of it out loud too, because it's a play. It's a whole different, so I think it encompasses you in a different way. But I mean, I thought he did an awesome job of, because he said something about that. Brutus said Shakespeare was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. And then he goes in, but he weaves in there that he refused the crown 3 times. So somewhere in all this, wow.
And that he left his estate. Like in the will, he left that to the people. I mean, what politician or general do you know has ever done that?
And I guess I did. I mean, I knew Caesar was killed. I knew that, but I didn't know how graphic it was that these senators, one stabs him in the throat, and then they just go and each one of them stabs him. And the last one to stab him is Brutus. And that's where that famous phrase is, et tu, Brute, which means you too, Brutus. Because, I mean, at that point, Brutus didn't even have to stab him because he's going to die. But Brutus did stab him. And
yeah. I
So-
mean, and that you could tell that hurt Caesar the most. That hurt worse than all the other stabs, was that his friend, it was betrayal.
And, just like Jesus, if someone else had betrayed Jesus, let's say just someone on the street and turned him in, that would have been sad, but for it to be Judas, one of his 12 inner circle.
Good connection. Good connection.
I mean, to me, that just went so closely, because I'm saying that hurts so bad. I mean, the betrayal, that was one, this little book journal that I have, it says, you always make me choose one word to describe the book, but they give you 3. And one of them is betrayal, because it's so graphic, about betrayal. But my other word I said was duplicity, because there's some duplicity going there, acting like I'm care about you, but do I really? What am I in it for? And then power. I mean, seems like everybody was hungry for power.
Except Julius Caesar. I don't feel like he was. The guy that got killed for it.
That's true. You're right. You nailed it. But I think that when you think about flattering someone, politicians are good at that. I mean, I would say politicians and maybe used car salesmen, they have that gift of saying what you need to here and all that, and that book that we talked about, negotiating with people, and I can't remember his name, but he has been in a lot of things. There's a gift. It's a gift. It's kind of a deadly gift to negotiating, to manipulating people. And it shows you Cassius had it, but Brutus was better. But all you have to do to flip the crowd is get the best one on your side. And then
and Mark Antony was so loyal, they didn't even approach him. I think they knew he was super loyal to Caesar.
So what did you think the themes were?
I see this like ambition versus the Republican freedom ideas. I mean, you see loyalty versus duty, public image kind of versus private image or your private self a little bit. And then, of course, like, they're just the consequences of our actions, because what they did, like, again, you're right. Brutus had this, I don't know what he thought would happen.
Good question.
But that's not what happened. And I think Brutus, I think at that moment, he probably would have not done it. But
in this one here, it says men at some time are masters of their own fate, but sometimes they're not either, but he's saying they're at times are masters of their own fate. But what you just hit on is powerful. Once you get the ball rolling, then consequences take over, and you can't change it after. I think Jonah said one time, once you go down this road, you get so far down that road, you can't go back. And I think that's the part that it's kind of sad when I think of Brutus as very talented, very, but you can say a lot of adjectives for Brutus, and they do. I mean, Shakespeare has a lot, but I said, notice he never said loyal. He never said loyal, but he had a lot of adjectives to describe him.
That's a good point. And really, what keeps us from that? Like, this is a trap that anybody can fall into. What prevents us from going down that road, I think, is prayer. And you ask God, because God knows everything. And if we can get our direction from him, like, should I do this? And then for sure, like, yes, go at that 110%, or don't go at it. Then you won't have to deal with those consequences of that. Because sometimes, and I think it says in the Bible, sometimes a man thinks a way is good, but it's not. In our heads, we can make something. It seems like it's a good way, but we're easily deceived. Just like Brutus. I mean, we're throwing rocks at Brutus right now, but really, we get deceived all the time. We believe lies that, the enemy, we believe things and are naive in that same way. So, I mean,
well, Hitler said the way to get people to believe a lie is to repeat it over and over, and it worked. How did he change people? The people of Germany, a lot of them had Jewish friends. How did he change that friendship to hate? How did he do that? Well, he just kept bombarding them with propaganda, and that's what Cassius did. He manipulated Brutus and kept, and after a while, you kind of hear the voice that's loudest.
And what do they call it? Is it like groupthink, or what do they call it when or I guess peer pressure too? Because Cassius, he had infected all these people with his ideology. And so then I feel like, I don't know what that is about us, but there's something about humans when the majority is saying something, you want to be included, you want to go in that direction.
That is so true. Good point. Because even if you know it's wrong, it takes a brave person to stand up and say, no, that's not right.
So, I mean, kudos to Mark Antony.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he was in a dangerous situation because he just saw the guy he's loyal to get stabbed to death. People know, they all know that he's on Caesar's side. So for him to take the stage, that was a brave thing to do. And he's speaking the complete opposite of what these killers he knows that he's going the opposite direction.
Of course, to be the other side, they say he's also power. He's seeking power as well. So, that's the flip side of that. But
why does it seem like he's seeking power? I would ask for evidence.
Well, I guess the outcome, maybe. I don't know. I need to read that second half of Antony and Cleopatra and see what happened. But yeah, he was my favorite. When it says your favorite character, I could have said Julius Caesar, but he died pretty quickly. I mean, for it to be named Julius Caesar, he does not last that long, you know. And that kind of surprised me, I guess. If you were saying what surprised me, one of my themes I thought was communication, just the power of communication in private and public.
That's good.
And we lost a lot of that during COVID. We actually lost a lot because kids just wouldn't. I mean, I noticed the next year they didn't want to do their oral book reports. You know, we call them book talks. They hesitated. So a skill that is basic, you would think, but if you cover your mouth and people don't see expression and all that. So communication is a skill we all need. And another one I thought of was honor.
Yes. Which would kind of go with loyalty. I feel like they're cousins almost.
Yes.
Because can you be honorable if you're not loyal?
That's true. And when Antony starts speaking, he said, I am no orator as Brutus is. So he's humble, or is he? But that seems humble, you know. But to me, in the play, he's a lot better orator than Brutus. But
I feel like, too, again, I feel like Brutus is speaking from the ideals, logically. He's justifying a horrible action, too. And I feel like Antony, I just don't see him as power hungry. I know people say that. I didn't get that from the story. I feel like he came in and was very raw and honest with but passionate, because he knew this was an injustice. And I feel like, I don't know if he's always that good of an orator or if it was just, he had some things to say. Like, he believed in what he was saying so much that it swayed the people. Because there is something, you can go to a good speech, or you can go to a speech where someone is like super passionate about it. The one that moves you more is the passionate one, not the one that necessarily is a good 3-point speech. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like Brutus had a good 3-point speech. Here's my takeaways, bop, 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 bop. And Antony comes in and he just
speaks from the heart.
He
says, but as you know me all, a plain, blunt man that love my friend, and that they know full well, that gave me public leave to speak of him. For I have neither wit, nor words, nor worth, action, nor utterance, nor the power of speech. To me, that seems pretty humble.
That's what I'm saying. I don't feel like he's power hungry. Yeah. I feel like he's angry at what they did to his friend. And I feel like he has to take the necessary steps you don't want these people in power. So he's like, well, he has to take power to get them out of power. So.
And he's also the one that says, and this is kind of popular too, mischief, thou art afoot. So when you think the boys are doing something, you should say that. Mischief, thou art afoot. I love that one.
That's good.
I could have used that a lot with you guys growing up, man. Because I'd say, oh, it's quiet. Mischief, thou art afoot.
Mischief, thou art.
But just, I know, then you have, after the assassination, it goes on. And let me just say, I don't want to put spoilers because they're, but Caesar's death was not the only death in the play. I mean, people are dying right and left later on. And I'm like, wow, that is woo. But yeah.
Which is typical in his plays. If it's not a comedy, I mean, be prepared for some
It's not
blood.
all the tragedy just out of the blue, I mean, even his comedies have some, but this is definitely a tragedy.
I had another quote from, is it Casca? But so every bondman in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. Which makes sense a lot of times. And really, Cassius, he's not a free man. He's in bondage to these lies he's believing. He's in bondage to the envy and the jealousy. He's not living a free life. So I thought that was powerful, that every bondsman in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. And I feel like that's what Jesus, he gives us the key, but we have to open the cage. Like sometimes we decide we're just going to stay in there. You know, he gives us the free gift, but you have to accept it.
It does say, behold, I stand at the door and knock. You have to open the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I heard a lesson on that God does not make the choice for you. And this was trying to be in relationship to children. We don't need to make choices for the kids. They need to make some choices and then see where that goes. And as this generation, people don't, that was one of my dad's saying, is like, you make a bad choice and maybe you nearly killed yourself trying to climb a tree a different way or whatnot. He would say, how did that work out? What did you learn? Did you learn something? I'm laying on the ground with a concussion. I'm just like, yeah, it's not the time for a lesson. But I do think that I think there's a part there where you have to let it play out and be patient enough to have that, let the kid discover. And that's what in school, you would have to do that. If a bully really truly changed and they're not a bully anymore, the kids aren't going to accept that right off. They're going to have to prove themselves. And I would always tell the quote unquote reformed bully, I say, they can't trust you just yet. You just have to give this time. And in time they will. But, you know, and I'm so impatient. So patience is one of the fruit of the Spirit that is, man, it's not in there just for looks. It's hard. And it's also, love is patient. Wow. But yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you pulled that out though, that we need to hold space for failure. A lot of times we don't want our kids to fail, but there's so much growth in failure. You have to fail to grow. Mistakes help us grow.
Mm-hmm.
But it is hard to watch someone fail and you see it. You know, you're like, that's not going to work. I see that not ending well. But to let it play out is hard.
And to let them discover that it didn't work. Mm. You know, I still remember my cousin climbing up that huge diving board pole, not the little one, the big one. And but isn't this funny? Because I'm a bystander and I was embarrassed that she didn't jump. I mean, everybody in the pool is circling her. The lifeguards are down there, everybody. And for the life of me, I can't remember what happened. I don't know.
Did you ever ask her?
I need to ask her because because I just read another book and it talked about that. This girl, she said she just jumped because her dad was down there and she knew her dad would take care of her. And so she didn't jump because she was brave. She jumped because she trusted her father. I connected that to God. God may, he may bring you to some place that would be very difficult, but you don't trust your skills. Don't trust your skill, but trust the Father because he will. Yeah, that's a book that my old college roommate Vera, it's Inhale is the name of it, which is funny because Jefferson Fisher's always saying, breathe, you need to breathe. And then she sends me a book called Inhale. I'm saying, well, what is it? Everybody's wanting me to breathe. But I love that because you're not really trusting anything except God. If you do something that you don't think you're qualified to do, you're just trusting God. And what could we accomplish if we did that every day? You know, and teach kids to do that. And like you said, leave room for mistakes because I think you learn more from a mistake than you do from if you did it right. You don't learn anything from that, actually.
I mean, unless the mistake is like, if Cassius is your son and you know what he's, let's put some, then you can like pull him back. I mean, there's some mistakes.
You're right. Somewhere along the way, his parents didn't rein that in. I had to have deception as a child. I see that. You can see that in little kids, deception. It had to be present. But maybe his parents were kind of like, they didn't notice it. But
yeah, it makes you wonder what did happen. What was the seed that was planted in his mind of this? And I don't even think it was Julius Caesar. I think I'm wanting to say it was someone else. Maybe the previous person, the king, or I don't, you know what I'm saying? Where did that bitterness come from? It came from somewhere.
Yeah. Well, at one point, Cassius tells Brutus a friend should bear his friend's infirmities, but Brutus makes mine greater than they are. And then Brutus said, I do not like your faults. And Cassius, a friendly eye could never see such faults. And then Brutus said, a flatterers would not, though they do appear as huge as Mount Olympus. I was just like, wow. So this was after, and they're having a little sparring, with words.
I was hoping Brutus would come to his senses about this time, but spoiler alert, he doesn't. So, because I thought he's seen Cassius for who he really is.
Mm-hmm.
But then he kind of goes back, and I was just like,
he does have the word waspish in this too. And we've had that in another one. But, when we think we have people now that are more volatile and all that, hey, I guess people were always waspish. They had people with a sting. In fact, one of them they said that Anthony had duplicity. He was a sweet, like a honeybee, sweetness without sting within. Because they just didn't think he would be as powerful as I don't think they thought he was as big a threat. Because like you said, Cassius did want to kill him, but then Brutus said, he's not a threat. Because Brutus thought, if anybody's going to speak their way out of it, it'll be me.
Going back to that speech, which you're talking about, I liked this part too, because everyone's saying that Caesar's ambitious, and that's why, that's what Brutus's speech was like. Oh, he was ambitious, we had to take him out. And Mark Antony says, ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yes. It's like, that's so well said. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And Brutus is an honorable man. Oh, you all did see that on Lupercell or something like that. But this is where I wrote beside it, clarifying question. So he said, I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? I'm like, clarifying question. That's what we needed. Yeah, that's what the people needed.
In fact, I have a clarifying question too.
What? High five! Good job!
I guess we could say the Count of Monte Cristo is still with us today, but yeah, definitely. Ask those clarifying questions though. Well,
it may prevent you from murdering someone who should not be murdered.
Being a party to it. What word did you choose for this?
Well, betrayal. I mean, but that's just the one that, you could go with ambition. But it's just, I feel like this is just the best picture of betrayal. Mm-hmm. As an example, when you think betrayal, Julius Caesar, Brutus, et tu, Brute, pops. Before I'd even read it, I would, I knew what that meant. I'd heard that saying, et tu, Brute. I knew the story before I'd even read this. So,
but isn't it cool to read it and it's like you got a backstage pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you for reading it with me, and thank you for the book, because it's so amazing to get sucked into this, even though you know how it's going to end and everything, but you're just like, oh, it's beautiful.
And then did you catch the let slip the dogs of war?
No, I did not.
I had heard that before, and I'm like, oh, that's Shakespeare. I didn't know that. Yeah, it's I don't know if we have the same page. 828, Act 3.
Yeah, and you know what confuses me? You were an actress, so act and scenes are very confusing to me. Act 3, what scene?
Scene 1. It's in spirit and Caesar's spirit. So the top of 828 for me starts at, and Caesar's spirit, ranging for revenge, with 8 by his side, come hot from hell, shall in these confines, with a monarch's voice, cry havoc, and let slip the dogs of war.
Yeah, we have the same page numbers. Cool. So I haven't heard that before. Well, you know what is amazing, though, that this shows you also the energy that men have. That they have this energy, and it goes a totally different way than the women in this. That's totally a different thing. The men want to fight. There's going to be a war. And because to me, I think they have all this energy. The women did not.
Well, they do say that testosterone's at an all-time low. I've had that thought, like, what was it like when testosterone's at an all-time high? Well, I guess you have Julius Caesar. That's what's happening.
Yep,
so
now we know. Yeah, that would be it, because they're wanting to.
But no, I think you make a valid point, though. I think they do have a lot of energy. I do think you're right. Men have a different energy, and you get to choose what you do with it. I think so. You can either build, you can create, you can all of that, or you can destroy. And so you do get to decide. But I think that's interesting that you pull that out. The women do have a totally different energy than the men.
I guess you're right. This was unabashed testosterone showing what happens when, that's why I think like sports like soccer and football, that's why they were invented.
You're probably right.
Imagine the mom saying, I have to get these kids out of here. And then they had a purpose when they weren't, in like Daniel Boone's day, they had to go get dinner. They had to go hunt, fish, provide.
Well, the Romans, what is it? Didn't they have a Circus Maximus where they had like the races and, and the Greeks, they had the Olympics, and you're right. That may have been the king might have came up with it. Hey, I don't want what happened to Julius Caesar. Watch y'all go run a race.
If the Magic Tree House, they have one where they go back to the Olympics, and at that time when they had the Olympics, only men were supposed to be in the Olympics. And I'm thinking, I would be totally okay with that. But now, women want this and women want that. They want to be like a man instead of having your identity and being a woman and embracing that. I don't understand the wanting to be. I think that's where gratitude comes in. You need to embrace who you are because you're unique. You're special. You're the way God made you, instead of wanting to be who. Apparently Cassius, I don't know that he envied Julius Caesar, but he envied his status, his power. He envied that. And so if he thought if he eliminated that, it would be him. He would be next.
And you make a valid point. What was Cassius's gift? We don't know. Like, but because he wasn't doing it. He was so envious and focused on what he didn't have. He wasn't, because everyone has a gift that's their special gift for the world. Like, what they're bringing something to the table that no one else can. They're feeling something, and we all, like a puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you're trying to be another puzzle piece, you're not going to fit. You're messing up the whole puzzle.
True. So, and you are bringing
which I know all about.
The dark side. Yeah, you had a couple of puzzles that you had a piece missing. Sorry about that, sis.
2 in a row. I don't know what's going on, but yeah. But anyway, well, that is a wrap on Julius Caesar by Shakespeare.
Thank you for stepping back in time with us to get a glimpse of history and of this famous play. And we hope you have no Brutus or Cassius in your circle for sure. And we hope you're.
Yes.
But, because of Kate, I have got outside my comfort zone and actually read Shakespeare, which I probably never would have. But I challenge you, try it. They're very short. They're not very long. And you just kind of read slowly and kind of like marinating a roast. Let it take some time, but I think you'll enjoy it. And we thank you so much for joining us so we can connect
to reflect.
Catch you on the next one.